Well, I prefaced this discussion by talking about big tornadoes that have hit this area. And I talked about 74, talked about 89, and I talked about 2011. And anyone who was around during that time, of course, remembers those storms for various reasons. I know, even though I was not here at the time, that the storm in 74 taught us a lot about how to prepare for these things and to deal with these things. And it was a pretty significant gap between 74 and the next really big one, which was in 89, November of 89. In fact, I remember being I was at work that afternoon at Phoenix and on Johnson Road, and remember seeing the sky turn a very pale green and gray, and the wind was picking up and howling quite a bit, and it started raining suddenly, and then we realized that something significant was happening when it started raining horizontally. And we saw things kind of flying around and going in lots of different directions. And at some time shortly after that, the tornado touched down right around the intersection of not far from where we were. And that was at the intersection of Airport Road and the Parkway, and then did significant damage at that time. I think that was my first real understanding that these are some pretty bad storms. And yet people still, I think, don't always know what to do. And I think one of the first things that we want to talk about is just the basic fundamentals of when people hear about a storm coming, what should people do?
Well, I think the preparation begins well in advance of a storm watch or a storm warning. People should expect these storms and be prepared. They should have emergency supplies at home. They need to have bottled water. They need to have a pre-planned place to go, medications, backup food supply in case it's a prolonged period before help can get to you. And so the preparation begins long before the storm warnings come.
And you know what a flashlight is and have a fresh supply of batteries.
Absolutely.
And all of those kinds of things. I love the fact that you said they need to know a place to go and not be caught up in the midst of something and be sort of frightened, because it's pretty frightening to be in the middle of something like that, even if it doesn't come directly and it's a direct hit. All the wind blowing, the rain falling sometimes, and the ominously dark clouds are pretty imposing at times. Does a person need a generator at home?
Well, and the generator is really for the time period afterwards, the recovery period. It would make life more comfortable if it's a wide-scale storm, it may be days before power is back on, or it could be days before emergency help arrives to help you. Mm-hmm. And so it's not necessary to weather the storm, but it certainly provides for help in the recovery period.
So maybe the big picture of preparation, people need to think about a lot of different pieces that they want to put together in that process.
They do, and something I'd like to mention on the generators, that's going to be one of the issues that we know we deal with after these type of storms is power outages, and for possibly several days. One of the things for our responders as far as a generator to help us is, if you're going to use a generator, you need to know, you'll have two options. You'll either have one that's installed, installed into your power system at your house that comes on, or you'll have a portable generator that you plug things in. Be sure you know what you're doing. One of the very big dangers to first responders is generators hooked up improperly. People don't think about it, but if you just plug something into a generator, like run a drop cord and plug in a freezer or refrigerator to keep it running, that's probably okay. Some people decide they're going to power their house and go through the power system. If you don't know how to disconnect the power or have a cutoff switch back into utilities, generators will backfeed back into the power system. Most people don't know this. And it will actually work in reverse, where that transformer cuts your power down, it'll amp your power up, and it's very dangerous to responders. One of the major hurricanes that was worked several years ago down in South Alabama, the only fatality we had from a responder was a generator that powered up while they were working.
Wow.
So we are constantly, even when the power's off, we can actually energize power lines that are down from a house generator that's hooked up improperly.
And of course, I'm sure you bring up a great point, Chief McFarlen, that one of the biggest risks in the midst of storm are electrical issues, fires, and other kinds of problems that people may face as a consequence of being caught up in the storm. If a person's outside, certainly they don't want to be near power lines, they don't want to be near trees. Where does a person go if they're outside and there's a storm?
Certainly the best place to go is anything that gets you below ground level. If you're outside, if you have a sturdy building to go to, that's the best place to go. If not, if you're caught out in the open, there's no sturdy, substantial building, even a ditch may offer better protection than just standing there. The idea is to get you below the high winds and the objects that are being blown at high speeds in those winds.
So a car seems, and I'm saying this because I'm kind of stating the obvious, but I need to because a lot of people still don't get it. A car seems stable because it's a multi-ton vehicle in the sunshine.
Right.
But in a tornado or a big wind incident, it can become something completely different.
It's a terrible place to be in a tornado. In 1989, probably half or better of our fatalities occurred in automobiles.
So people perhaps feeling the safety of the automobile or not recognizing the potential danger of remaining in the vehicle
Right.
put themselves at greater risk consequently. So getting out of that vehicle, if possible, getting to the lowest place that you can get, extremely important.
Right.
And acting quickly, too, I would imagine is a big part of the process, too. Not sort of evaluating, is it safe, is it okay, can I outrun it, can I ignore it? No, acting quickly seems to be a big part of that as well.
Well, and the preference is to shelter in place. The only time I've seen any recommendation that you leave the structure in is if you're in a mobile home and have access to a sturdier structure immediately. But the recommendation is still shelter in place. Find the best place in your house and hunker down.
And what is that best place? I know a couple of them that are here traditionally, but what is the best place in the house?
It's probably still like your bathroom or under the stairs, wherever there's reinforced structure.
Yeah. And you want to stay away from what types of areas of the house?
Windows.
Windows, large rooms, second stories, countless homes that you see that have been damaged by tornadoes, the second story is gone. What usually remains standing is that innermost core of the home on the lowest level. Even if they go in a basement, we recommend they cover their head, get under a workbench because objects can be tossed about and land on top of them, even in a basement.
Yeah.
You've got to, if everyone would kind of imagine that your two biggest things that you need to shelter yourself from, one is building collapse, and that's why you want a smaller room because theoretically there's more wood standing up and should be stronger. And the other one is objects become missiles, and whether it's a 2x4 or a mailbox or anything that the wind can pick up. It's not just the wind, and that goes back to your point about the automobiles. Anything that can come through just becomes a missile at that speed. So you're going to get more interior and smaller places and down low.
Yeah. I imagine it's a pretty good idea to have a weather radio if you're at home and turn that radio on and listen to what's going on.
Definitely.
And they're pretty handy things. I mean, they're available lots of different places.
They are, and the advantage in our area now is they're able to alert by polygon the actual area that's going to be affected by the storm.
Wow.
And so there was a period of time prior to the 2011 storms where we become desensitized to the sirens and the weather signals because we had to broadcast those over a wide area. But I think with the new polygon technology, if your weather radio is going off or you hear the outdoor warning siren, it's time to take cover.
Because it's pretty certain that it's in your zone.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's good information to have, that they've upgraded the technology to at least be able to pick that up, because I think you're right. A lot of people have become desensitized to the process and kind of figure, well, the wind blew hard and fast the last time and the rain fell really hard and I did okay, and so that's not necessarily the way to go. Now, a lot of people are also building those tornado shelters now.
There are a tremendous number of shelters out there. I think we've registered about 1,200 in the city of Madison since the 2011 storms.
Wow.
And we ask people to, they can go online at our site or City of Huntsville site and register their shelter. And we put it on a map, and that way if your neighborhood is affected, we know where those shelters are and we can come look for you.
So the first step is to put it in, but then you want to make
Yes.
sure somebody can track it.
Yes,
And people think about that anytime there's a new watch. Our registrations go up tremendously within 24 hours of a new watch being issued.
yes, because what actually will happen for us response to an area that's been hit by a tornado, and actually the a lot of these shelters, many of them now, they have some that even go in your garage, that's under, you use the garage, except you can use this at times. That's actually one of the key things that started us to say, hey, we need to have these registered. Because if we go to that area and we have buildings collapse, and the buildings have collapsed, and we're doing our primary survey of that area, trying to look for life or people that needs rescuing, we may not know that if we don't know there's a storm shelter under the house, it'll go to a different level of priority. We'll start searching other areas where there's a higher priority. Whereas now, where we can map these, when we go into those areas, we'll have a map showing this house has an underground shelter. This one has one out back. It helps us tremendously. It'll help us a lot to be able to work really fast as we can, because when we're dealing with those type of situations from an emergency response standpoint, resources are at a premium, and we've got to be as effective as we can with the searches that we do.
Yeah, give me a little bit of the backstory behind a potential weather incident. We know as residents in the city that maybe the sirens will go off, and we know the radio alarm may go off. We know that the weather's changing. What's happening for the first responders? What's going on in your arenas?
Well, it's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and if we don't have an event, that's okay too. We actually have, interesting enough, in this area, and I can speak with Huntsville Fire and Madison Fire, we actually have our normal fire response, and we have personnel that are trained to work with situations like that. We've also got what's called a heavy rescue team that we share actually between the City of Huntsville and City of Madison Fire Department. We have a lot of personnel that have a lot of extra training for structural collapse and how to do this. And we actually start watching the same as with emergency management. As the Weather Service starts saying there may be a storm 2 days from now or a day from now, we start watching those situations, and we may actually even ramp up our capabilities. We actually have some certain trigger points that we look at based on predictions that we may bring in extra staff. We've got trigger points that we actually will bring in what we call strike teams that are like 4 to 5 specially trained personnel that can go into a specific area and do some of the specially, for example, that team will have the capability for what's called a wide area search. If you have just a debris field, you've got to be able to grid it off and not search the same place 2 or 3 times and miss another area. So those type of teams are coming in place. They'll be pretty much, you wouldn't notice them, the average citizen wouldn't notice they're in place, but we're preparing and looking at that and trying to prepare for that.
Right, so we can have great confidence that there's something going on behind the scenes, that if something should happen, there's going to be an immediate response. And I think we've seen that through one challenge after another.
Yes.
We definitely saw it in 2011, this massive community response to a major crisis that few of us had seen before. I've never been without power that long in my life. And the gas lines, I hadn't been in those kinds of lines since the 70s when, we had the gas short embargo. And, it's just really, really, I think, an interesting experience on the one hand to have that happen in a community, but it was also interesting to see the response. And I think one of the obvious outcomes of that for community residents was just a greater appreciation, because, here I am waiting for my electricity to come back on. Some siding had come off the house and had a few other pieces of damage. Other houses and communities had been completely destroyed. There was lots of stuff going on, gas shortages and stuff like that. But there were people out there, you all, working to fix that.
Right. And that begins days prior to the event. The Weather Service will give us an emergency management a heads up notice that they're expecting severe weather. We call in all first responders, fire department, police department, public works, our hospitals, our school systems, anybody that has the potential to be affected for weather briefings, and that goes on for a day or two prior to the actual event. That coordination begins, and we begin talking with one another and coordinating our plans, what we're going to do to prepare for this event and respond to it. So that happens in every event we're expecting severe weather.
Well, and I will say that preparation begins long before that. It begins with established relationships.
Exactly. That's a good point.
The responders taught there are no jurisdiction lines between responses, but it's planned at the state level. We have a state mutual aid system that's in place to work. The heavy rescue team that Chief McFarlen mentioned has been to Hurricanes Katrina and Ivan, and Rita, and responded out of town before we were hit on in the 2011 tornadoes, and came back to our area after we were hit. But the preparation begins a long time before we're with established relationships.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly what makes you all the real heroes for me and for so many other people who I'm sure share my sentiments. I want to switch gears just for a moment because you all are here, and I want to take full advantage of your knowledge and expertise and the opportunity that we have to really inform the community about many challenges that they face out there. A number of years ago, I came home. I'm a gadget guy, and I'll tinker with things from time to time. I'll just purchase something because I think it's a cool thing to have. And even if it has some real functionality to it, I'll just think it's a cool thing. So I had fire detectors all around my house, but I never had a carbon monoxide detector. And I thought I'd pick one up. And so I picked one up and put it in the house and just sat there for several years. Well, one day I come home, and this is probably about 10 years ago now, and the alarm is going off. And I'm thinking, well, that's kind of weird because, you've gone all this time without ever hearing it go off, and now it's going off. You think, well, that can't be carbon monoxide, but then the alarm is going off. And I was really confused for a moment, but I was also very thankful that I had it because what eventually ended up happening was I placed a call, and Huntsville Fire and Rescue came out. And in numbers, I mean, guys were everywhere looking for stuff. And, I had already opened up all the windows and the alarm had gone off and stuff. And I said, well, now that worked. When I opened up the windows, the alarm went off. So I said, And turns out there was a leak in my house. And I felt so appreciative and thankful to have that because, very easily, my wife and I would have gone to sleep that night maybe unaware of this colorless, odorless, tasteless gas, and it could have been a different outcome. But I was so appreciative to have that. But the response was just phenomenal. And it made me think, I've got fire rescue guys here for carbon monoxide. This is pretty cool. There's no smoke, no flames. But obviously you do so much more than just fight fires and deal with severe weather preparedness. Talk about some of the other kinds of duties and responsibilities you have.
Well, we do. And, a question we get a lot of times that is from citizens sometimes is, why do y'all have to have such a big truck? Well, it's kind of like if you do a lot of things, you have to have a big toolbox.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, we do everything from vehicle electrification for people that's trapped in cars. The next call we may get may be the carbon monoxide detectors. And not only do we have to understand the elements involved, we have special sensors and monitoring equipment. We can check the air to see if it's really what we're doing or not. Special type rescues, as Chief Cobb and I talked about a minute ago, the technical rescues. It may be a confined space rescue below ground. It may be a high angle rescue up high somewhere. It is pretty much anything you can imagine that we're dealing with along those lines.
Well, and we have a service policy that if it's not illegal, immoral, or unethical, and it's something we can reasonably do for anybody, we'll just do it. We went out to a house the other day, and I saw it in their daily report. They went out to change a smoke detector from an elderly individual who couldn't get on a ladder.
Wow.
And when they realized that her house was dark, they realized that she had a similar problem with her light bulbs, and ended up changing all the light bulbs in the house.
Wow.
So however we can help, we just try to do that.
Yeah, and fire officers, I've visited a fire station before, and it's like a family. Firemen and firewomen work shifts, and they are not the regular 8 to 5 kind of things. And sometimes we don't recognize that as the average citizen who may be doing that kind of thing. Talk about that whole dynamic of how a person actually faces their week as a person working for either Huntsville or Madison Fire and Rescue.
Well, it's like a family setting. As we tell new recruits when they come in, you'll probably spend more time with your fire station family than you do your family at home. Because typically the emergency response personnel are on 24 hours and off 48. And so that 24 hours there is, you start out with daily duties at the station to make sure everything is ready. That one of our key things is everything has to be ready. ready at all times. And so drivers are checking trucks, firefighters are checking things at the station, officers are checking other things. During the day, you're going to have training classes. We do quite a bit of training. I mean, the days that we're on, we do 20 hours of continuous fire training per month, along with other training for us, medical and things that we do. And then we do check hydrants and check pre-fire plans. And although not part of that family setting, I would like to throw this in that you don't see a lot, that people don't think about readily, and that's the insurance protection rating. When you start paying your house insurance, depending on the fire rating that you've got, a good story that we can show, I went back for the city of Huntsville and looked at what the property tax were. We was able to get the numbers for what property was worth inside the city limits of Huntsville, for example. And then we knew what it would take from talking with several insurance companies to insure that. And to make a short story of this, for our budget that's based on tax dollars, for every tax dollar in Huntsville Fire and Rescue's budget, we're saving the taxpayers $8 in insurance premiums. That's quite a return, but it's kind of invisible, you don't realize it. But we do that by doing the training, checking the hydrants. But the daily life at the station it's interesting. You cook there, you work with each other, it's real close-knit. Chief Cobb might want to add some.
Well, and I'll say that everything we do is teamwork based, everything. And you know, a police officer may be out there riding alone for patrol for 8 hours, and he may interact with other officers from time to time. But a firefighter's life's dependent upon that same guy. He's having to decide what's for lunch.
Interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
I sense there's a lot of experience, a lot of years of experience on the set right now. Chief, how long have you been with Huntsville Fire and Rescue?
I've been with Huntsville Fire and Rescue for 30 years.
Wow. Chief, how long have you been with Madison Fire and Rescue?
I've been with Madison 14 years, but I've been in the fire service since 1981.
Wow. Scott, how long have you been a part of EMA?
Emergency management since 2001, and prior to that, law enforcement experience dating back to 1993.
Wow. See, I get that sense because not only are you able to really articulate what the role that you play is and vast range of experience that you have and knowledge that you have, but it's obvious that you also have a love for what you do. And I think that's as much a part of the importance and the value of anything that you may set out to talk about, get involved in, or feel passionate or dedicated about. And I think that this city is fortunate, city of Madison is fortunate, our EMA services in the county are fortunate to have people like yourselves because you represent a much larger group who have similar passions and dedication and commitment. And I'm just happy to be able to share this stage with you today and talk with you about these kinds of things because I think it's so valuable for citizens in the community to recognize and appreciate and understand what you do from day to day. There may be something that people don't necessarily know about Huntsville Fire and Rescue that you'd like to share, something that people may not know about Madison Fire and Rescue or EMA that you'd like to share. Just a little interesting thing somewhere that you've come across in your experience or your day-to-day work that goes on or that you think would be interesting for the public to know, or something that they don't know with regards to what their perception is of the work that you do. What might that one thing be?
You know, I guess if I had to look at what I think is perception out there sometimes, you know, an old perception was that we just sat around and waited for things to catch on fire. and it is such more than that. It is so much more than that. It is, our days are actually really filled, even at the station. There's so much training that has to take place, so much of the other stuff to keep our insurance underwriters, our ISO rating, and then the equipment, keeping it up. You know, some of the stuff we're looking at budget-wise is equipment cost. I mean, a lot of folks don't realize that you're looking at $400,000 to $500,000 for a fire engine, over $1 million for a ladder truck. And, you know, we try to make them last as long as we can, so. But, you know, there's a lot of cost involved, but we try to take care of that stuff.
Yeah. And those are essential tools, too, to get the job done.
They are.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say that one thing that applies to both departments is most of the calls we answer are not fire calls. They're emergency medical calls. And the proximity in the neighborhoods that came about over the last 15 or 20 years that we're also the first responder for your medical calls. And with our distance from the hospital, we're advanced life support. We have everything that the ambulance has except for the stretcher, and can do everything that they do in preparing for their arrival. And I'll say one statistic that I'm very proud of. If you have your cardiac arrest in the city of Madison, you're twice as likely to walk out of the hospital and live a normal life as anywhere else.
Wow.
And our guys have done that, just becoming proficient and taking pride in what they do and the passion that you mentioned.
Wow, wow, that's great to know. Scott?
Well, emergency management, a lot of times we're viewed as just an agency that responds to severe weather. While that is probably our most prevalent hazard that we have here, we also have to be ready for, say, any event that were to take place at Browns Ferry. We're the county radiological monitoring office, basically. We also work closely with our medical professionals should there be any need for, let's say we were all worried about the H1N1 flu. Those type pandemics, those type of problems that could be medical disasters. It has nothing to do with severe weather, but we work closely having those plans, programs, and equipment in place to mitigate against that if it should happen.
That's all interesting stuff to me because, you know, we, like you said, Chief, we see the face of the job, but we don't necessarily know the backstory of the job. And there's so many other things that go on a routine basis. Chief Cobb, you saying the majority of the issues you face aren't even fire related. You know, I think that really gives people a great appreciation for the depth of the work that you have to do. And we thank you very much for that. We've got maybe just a couple of minutes or so left. We want people to know how they can possibly contact you if they need to get more information. I'm sure you do training and public service kinds of things that can help the community learn more about how to deal with things better. You may have a website as well. If you want to just share that with people at this time, I'll give you that chance to do that.
Sure. As far as Huntsville Fire, you go to huntsvilleal.gov, the city website, and you go into public safety and find fire. And you can go to that, and if they need to, talking on the storms, if they need to register their storm shelter, please do. I mean, that stays internal to us, to the public safety, so we know where they are. And real quickly, I'd just like to say one thing with Chief Cobb here and EMA here, Scott here. One of the things that we have in this whole region that we don't see so much, and Chief Cobb touched on it, is we all actually work every day together. We get along so well. We know that we've all got to make it work. We're a piece of the puzzle. So we're used to working with each other all the time on it.
That's got to make a big difference.
It does.
Yeah. Chief Cobb?
Well, and I'll reiterate what he says. It's about teamwork. And, you know, we've had several city administrations go through a process of saying we're tearing down the barriers and all, and I'm real quick to tell them there never were any between the responders. But our website is madisonal.gov, and you'll see under departments, there's fire department. And we teach CPR classes, fire extinguisher training classes, just a number of things. And you can drop by any fire station in Madison 24/7, and there's a car seat technician there that can help you help check your child's car seat, and just a wide range of services.
All right. It's good to have a fire extinguisher in the home as well. Scott, we need to wrap it up, but quickly tell us how to get in touch with you.
MadisonCountyEMA.com is our website. Also, we have information, different preparedness topics, sample plans, things of that nature, as well as information about classes that we teach as well.
All right. We want to thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. Chief Howard McFarlen with Huntsville Fire and Rescue. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Chief Ralph Cobb with Madison Fire and Rescue. We thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And Scott Worsham, who is with the Emergency Management Agency, and he's a coordinator there. We thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much.
We thank you for being a part of our broadcast, and we hope you've learned a little something about how to be prepared for severe weather and a little bit extra in order to be safe. As always, we thank you for joining us, and we hope that you'll tune in for our next broadcast of Impact. I'm Kenny Anderson. We hope you have a good day.